Hello now. Here's a sort of review of what's going on at the moment. The other day, President Putin said very clearly those not yet called up will not be involved in the war. No conscript has participated in the war, only the regular army is involved. This has just been completely disproved in the Russian media today, and it was admitted today at exactly 5:15. And I'm going to read the actual statement. Unfortunately, it has come to light that conscripts were present in the units of the Russian armed forces participating in the special military operation in the Ukrainian territory. Almost all of these servicemen have already been withdrawn to Russian territory. And they've admitted being attacked and that several conscripts have now been taken hostage. The admission suggests, frankly, does it not, that Russia is worried that conscripts may have spoken out and that the story may emerge directly from Ukraine. At the same time, this story has been, I think, has been prompted, or at least Mr. Putin's initial denial that conscripts were involved has been prompted by the exodus of Russians to Finland and Georgia. And Georgia has threatened to stop the visa-free travel between Russia and Georgia and is extremely volatile and worried about whether or not it should formally condemn the Russian action in Ukraine. So far, it doesn't seem to have explicitly done so, but it is on the verge of doing so. Now, more worrying is the trickle of stories from Russia suggesting that Ukraine has been manufacturing a dirty bomb. It's got a dirty bomb factory in Chernobyl. That's one of the claims, especially when we know that the control of the faculty, of the facility, of the site has been compromised by the occupying Russian force. Now, this isn't the first dirty bomb story that Russia has put forward. In 2015, the Russian media claimed that Ukrainian nationalists, or what they now call neo-Nazis, were caught trafficking in nuclear materials and radioactive waste. The West, at the time, it says, pointed to a false flag operation where a dirty bomb would then be blamed on the Ukrainians. And in fact, the Russians at the time blamed a press conference by the National Security Council head, Alexander Turchinov, which happened on the 9th of April. And this meeting was actually fairly innocuous, and it was attended by Western media as well as by Russian media. But the Kremlin and their media heard something quite different to what the West heard at the same meeting, and TASS warned from that meeting on the 9th of April, about 10 days later, it warned that this was a rogue state manufacturing a dirty bomb, and that it was going to invoke Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. Now, Chapter 7 of the UN Charter allows for an invasion to restore international peace. It's quite clear that the original address made no such mention of any dirty bomb or any threats of that nature at all. Now, Russia continues to claim, and has continued since 2014, that there was a genocide in the Donbass by Ukrainian nationalists on Russian speakers. There's no evidence at all has been provided. And those reporters in Russia who have questioned this story have since gone silent, or been silenced, who knows. This sort of propaganda is now accompanied by the old USSR claim that Russia is threatened by NATO. This is propaganda of the most arch form. There's nothing credible in any of this. And it's extraordinary that Russia is getting away with this. Putin has a long, long history of false flag operations going all the way back to the 1999 apartment bombing in Moscow that killed 300 people. And this led to, this was the excuse for the second war in Chechnya, and it also directly promoted and prompted and propelled Putin into power. Now, a book in 2012 by John Dunlop strongly suggests, very interesting book, that there was complicity by the Russian authorities in the bombing itself. And this was a way to counter the failing popularity and an alcoholic and ailing President Yeltsin, as well as a growing rumor that Yeltsin and his daughters had squirreled away huge funds in a secret bank account using a Swiss construction firm called Mabatex. All very suspicious, all very possible. And I think this new offensive was designed in the same way to unite the country behind Mr. Putin. If it worked well once, it can work well again. At the same time, be in no doubt that Russia also has a history of using chemical weapons. So its claim by Maria Zakharova that Russia, in the last few days, that Russia has documents showing US biochemical weapons in Ukraine that threaten plague, anthrax, and cholera, and of a chemical weapons factory or of a chemical weapons dump in a village near Kharkiv. All of this is, I think, a false flag and is very, very threatening. It is Russia that supplied the Syrian regime with chemical weapons, especially a chlorine attack in Duma in April 2018, which Russian media blamed on Britain, and the OPCW, the UN watchdog, were clear that these weapons were dropped. This attack was dropped by the Russian-sponsored Syrian Air Force, and 40 people died. So that is where we are. We could also point to the growing prevalence of the Z propaganda that's now being linked across Russia to the celebrations which are held annually to mark the end of World War II on the 9th of May. It's increasingly, the Zs are increasingly painted in orange and black, linking the Z directly to what Russia calls the Great War. So, and more specifically, the Z has been the sign for the Donbass troops, and the V is the sign of the troops coming into Ukraine from the north. The Z now dominates. The V does not stand for East, especially whatever people are claiming, especially as it comes from the northern forces. It cannot stand for East. It comes from the forces based in Belarus. And the other thing which I think quite interesting is the Russian news is completely avoiding any reference to a siege of Kiev, or indeed denying that there's a huge train of soldiers leading into Kiev, and there's no reference to the to more than 500 who have died, or indeed to the generals who have been killed in the fighting so far. Once these stories come out, the propaganda is going to change, but I think we have to be very, very prepared for a new phase in this war. And maybe if we're hearing of conscripts being removed from the front, we may also get the impression that more soldiers are being removed. Then I think we need to be very worried, because maybe Russia is clearing the way for another form of attack.